Welcome to the 1 Minute Transformation. I'm James Lehman. In this audio program, I'm going to show you 10 techniques that will take 1 minute or less that will turn your child's attitude around. Now, I know what you're thinking. It sounds wonderful, but impossible. And I understand that. If you're living with a child who's obnoxious or disrespectful, hostile, or even violent with you or other family members, you probably feel so powerless with this kid. You can't imagine saying or doing any one thing that will turn his behavior around that quickly. Well, the good news is you can. The 10 techniques I'm going to show you here today are quick, simple interventions I've used with kids for over 30 years, and they work. I've taught them to hundreds and hundreds of parents, many of whom were dealing with behavior problems far worse than what you're going through today, and these techniques worked for them. So if you're struggling with a behavior problem that seems insurmountable, if every disagreement with your kid escalates into major conflict, if your kid is constantly disrespectful to you in public or in front of friends or all the time, here are 10 things you can do right now to get back in control and turn your kid's attitude around that take 1 minute or less.
Technique number 1. Assume control.
I want you to project an image of self-confidence without being hostile. Give directions instead of making requests. Establish and maintain your parental rights to the same decent treatment that you give your kids. The kind of information that I want you to give your kids when you're assuming control is simple direction. For instance, if your kid is supposed to be in his room doing his homework and he's down in the basement, the question to ask him is, where are you supposed to be? And if he says, in my room, the response is, go there. Not, why aren't you there already? Why are you out of your room? Just, where are you supposed to be? Go there. What are you supposed to be doing right now? Do it. Very simple statements that give an air that you're in control. You don't justify yourself. You don't explain yourself. You don't ask your kid for explanations because, I'll be honest with you, we ask kids why, and then when they tell us, we say, it sounds like an excuse. We don't ask kids for excuses. If we don't ask them for excuses, there's a good chance we won't get excuses. You know, attitude is a funny thing. Part of what shapes attitude are perceptions and expectations. And that's very important for a parent to understand. That this kid has expectations of you, and he has certain perceptions of you and himself. When you say to a child, I want you to go to bed now, what you're starting to do is you're affecting his expectation of who's in control. If you sound like you're in control and you're the parent, you're on your way to being in control. You know, part of the thing is that these kids train us. Acting out kids train their parents to talk to them in a tiptoe around me way. Acting out kids train their parents to give in to them. Acting out kids train their parents to be afraid of them. And so they train their parents not to assume control, not to do direct statements. And so the perception of the kid is, you know, they have a bad attitude, but what does that really mean? It means that the kid perceives himself as in control and entitled to things that he's not without earning them, and has expectations of how things are going to go. And one of those expectations is, you know, I'm going to get my way. It's going to go my way. When a parent assumes control, what that says to the kid is, I'm in control now. Your posture has to begin the change process. The change starts with the parent and then goes to the child. This takes a minute or less, and what we do is you use these techniques in conjunction with each other and in conjunction with the Total Transformation Program, and over time, people change. Just change your tone to a very frank, business-like tone and tell him what he's supposed to be doing. Go to your room and start doing your homework, and then turn around and walk away.
Technique number 2. Disconnect.
The second technique that I want to talk to you about is called disconnect. It means to cut off communication once the child becomes disrespectful, obnoxious, or abusive. Give a direction, tell the child exactly how you want him to behave, and then turn around and walk away. If you're in the car, you stop the car. If you're in a store, you leave the store. Whatever's going on, you stop the show. You don't keep the conflict going. So when you say to this kid, we have to do A, B, C, or there's something that we have to do now, or I was thinking this, and he says, I don't care, I don't have to do it, or he uses vulgar or foul language, you say 2 sentences to him. Don't talk to me that way, I don't like it. And then you turn around and walk away. And that sentence has to become one of your standard sentences. Don't talk to me that way. I don't like it. And then you turn around and walk away. You don't stand there and ask for explanations of why he's acting this way at this time, because then you're just giving him power. Again, you're acting like you're the subordinate. In fact, once you say, "Why are you doing this?" he starts to tell you how unfair you are or what a victim he is. So the quicker you disconnect, the less you're fueling those distorted beliefs and distorted perceptions, which he uses to justify his behavior. One of the problems that occurs when parents try to deal with these kind of kids is that the parent doesn't let the kid feel uncomfortable. They keep going back. They keep trying to finish their concept, finish their sentence in a way. I don't know what the hope is. The hope seems to be he'll go, "Oh, okay, now I understand, Mom. I'm going to get better grades." And that's never going to happen. "Oh, now I understand, Mom. I should have been cleaning my room. That's my job." That's never going to happen. And so from the kid's perceptions that he's a victim and you're unfair, he has trained you to justify things and to make excuses for yourself and to over-explain things. And I just think that feeds that perception that he's in control. I think if you disconnect, you're teaching kids that you're in control and that you're not going to be spoken to that way. You may remember earlier I said that establish and maintain your parental rights to the same decent treatment that you give your kids. Well, this is the same thing. This is how you establish it, and this is how you maintain it. When that kid becomes disrespectful, you leave. Listen, if you're at a party with your kids over his friend's house and you're there talking to the parents and he's disrespectful to you, you tell him, "I'll be out in the car in 2 minutes. I want you to come. We're going home. If you're not there, I'm going home without you. And in 2 minutes, you go home." Let him worry about how he's going to get home. Let him call you later and apologize. Let him get a ride. But you're putting the pressure back on him. You're putting it back on him. You're not owning the problem. When you don't disconnect, you're owning some of the problem. You're buying the concept that this problem is partly me, that I didn't explain it good enough. You're 15 years old and I haven't made it clear yet that you need to do your homework. You're 12 years old and I haven't made it clear yet that you can't call me a jerk. Listen, parents want to be liked by their kids. They want to be loved by their kids, but they want to be liked by their kids. Parents want to be their kid's friend. And so what tends to happen over time, that's a great concept when the kid is 2. I want to be your friend. I want you to like me. That's a great concept as the kid is developing. But once that kid starts misbehaving, or once that kid starts demonstrating that he has problems communicating and solving problems, then that posture of "I want to be your friend, I want you to like me," isn't really effective anymore. You just have to set the limit, disconnect from the situation, and let him or her deal with the discomfort.
Number 3, script it for the next time.
During periods of stability, discuss different behavioral interventions you are going to utilize the next time you're involved with a specific inappropriate behavior. Do this casually and low-key. The idea is to give the child a script to follow during the next conflict. I'll give you an example of that. I had a mother-daughter conflict in my office, and the mother kept saying, "Get off the phone," and the daughter kept saying, "In a minute," and that goes on for about 10 minutes, and then the mother unplugs the phone, then the daughter escalates and acts out and becomes verbally abusive and destructive of property. What I suggested to the mother, and I had them both in my office, is that to establish that the next time I tell you to get off the phone, I'm unplugging it in 1 minute. You don't keep saying it. You don't keep threatening it. You just do it. Now, they were calm. She was able to repeat what her mother was going to do. The idea is that she understood it, whether she liked it or not, whether it made her angry or not. She understood that this was going to happen next time. That the next time you disrespect me in a store, I'm leaving. I'm going to the car. If it's a younger kid, you say, the next time you disrespect me in the store, I'm taking you to the car. So that way, what happens is the person is expecting it. Again, you're affecting their perceptions about who's in control, and you're affecting their expectations. When they don't follow your direction, we teach them what's going to happen ahead of time. So that way then, number 1, you really are assuming control. Number 2, you do this in a time when there's no conflict. You do this the next day. This is what a parent should say to the child. I don't like it when I have to keep telling you to go off the phone. I don't think you like it either. I think it just makes us both nuts. And I'm going to tell you from now on, I'm going to tell you to get off the phone, and then in 1 minute, I'm going to unplug the phone. And that's just the way it's going to be. Listen, I don't like how it feels when you talk to me in a store disrespectfully and rude. I don't like that at all. So the next time that happens, I'm going to tell you to stop it. I don't like it. If you don't stop it, I'm going out to the car. I'll give you a minute to get to the car, and then I'm going home. And you can find your own way home. And if the kid can't find a way home, let him call. You're letting that kid know. If it's a younger child, when you act this way in a store, I'm going to tell you to stop it now. If you don't stop it now, we're leaving the store. If I have to grab you by your britches and your shirt, we're leaving that store. So that in a calm time, the kid understands. It gets through. You know, when things are escalating, when they're under stress, they cannot learn. That is not a time for learning. The time for learning was everybody's calm sitting down. Parents are afraid to bring things up then, thinking there'll be a fight. But that's the time to bring something up. And again, no speeches. Just matter-of-factly say what it's like for you and what you're going to do about it next time.
Number 4, no speeches.
There's a right way to tell your kid to do something or respond to something, and then there's a wrong way. There's an effective way to tell your kid to do something or respond to something, and then there's an ineffective way. What tends to happen with kids who act out behaviorally or who are disrespectful or rude is that parents tend to justify themselves socially or morally. They make rationales. They try to explain themselves. Again, that whole thought of maybe he'll understand, maybe he'll like me. The kid has already taught the parent that he blames them for his problems. And so what the parent tries to do in these kind of situations is make a speech to justify what they're doing in the hope that the kid won't blame them. Well, that blame them is part of how he sees the world, and that's what we're going to change. Total transformation is designed to transform the way a kid sees the world, to transform the way a kid sees his parents, to transform the expectations that the kid has of his parents. Here's an example of a parent using a speech. You have to do your homework. Well, why? I don't like homework. I don't want to do my homework. And then the parent starts to go on and on about, well, it's going to affect your grade and that's going to affect your career. And, if you want to play football, you have to get an A. Come on, Tommy, if you do your homework now, I'll do this or I'll do that. The parent either gives the kid excuses for why, rationalize it. The kid knows he has to do his homework. He's not an idiot. The parent rationalize it or makes moral justifications for it, why it's right, instead of very clearly just saying, you got to do your homework now because that's your responsibility. I made dinner. That's my responsibility. And to say that in this very brief 15 seconds, just focus on that. It's your responsibility to go do your homework. Go do it. And that's what we want. And if the kid debates back or anything, you turn around and walk away. We use the example of the policeman who stops to give you a ticket. When I'm speeding and a policeman stops me to give me a ticket, he doesn't offer me rationalizations. He doesn't morally justify it. He doesn't say that the statistics show that if I go slower, I'll live longer. He says, here you are, Mr. Lehman. Don't drive that way. We don't like it. And he turns around and walks to his car. He doesn't follow me home. And so parents have to have the same focus when it comes to law and order things. Let me tell you, if you don't challenge the kid, he sees himself as powerful. And he's going to do that technique again. If you challenge him, if you tell him, go do your homework now, that's your responsibility. I don't want to talk to you about it. And you turn around and walk away. If he says, I don't have to, he's a kid. You go on about your business. So when you set these kind of limits, when you do these things, your child very well may escalate. That's the manner of it. That's what he's been trained to do. Your child has learned that if he escalates, you'll give in. But remember, in the Total Transformation Program, we have a methodology called trigger management, in which we help you and your kid learn how to manage those triggers more effectively.
Technique number 5, focus on the behavior.
Focus on the problematic behavior that is occurring now. Be specific. State what behavior you want to see change now, not on what attitudes or emotions you want to see changed. It takes much longer for emotions to change than it does for behaviors to change. Remember this. People say, I want you to have a better attitude. what they're really saying is, I want you to have different expectations and I want you to have different perceptions. Well, those expectations and perceptions are shaped by the way parents respond to kids. If you want them to have a different attitude, you have to shape their expectations and perceptions in such a way that they don't think they're in control and that they don't think they can get in control by being disrespectful or abusive to you. It's a very important thing to understand. We're not looking for the kid not to be angry. We're looking for him to manage the impulsive behavior that anger triggers. A lot of parents say, don't resent me. Too late. What the parents has to be saying or thinking is, whether you're resentful or not, now's the time to go do your homework. Whether you're resentful or not, don't call me names. Whether you're angry or not, you don't call me names. If you're angry, that's fine. People have feelings all the time. You have to learn to take responsibility for your feelings. In the 1-minute transformation, you just want to focus on what's going on now. You want what's going on now to stop. You want to say what you see changed. I want you to go to your room and do your homework. I want you to stop yelling at your sister. Don't say, I want you to stop being angry. Say, I want you to stop punching walls. Feelings make parents uncomfortable. And parents, a lot of times, deal with the discomfort of bad feelings from their kids by trying to change their own behavior. And that doesn't work. If my kid is angry, there's absolutely nothing in the world I can do about that. I can only act in a way that is going to promote him taking responsibility for that anger. If I start making speeches with him and moralizing with him and talking to him about all the good things in his life that he shouldn't be angry about and why is he angry again, or if I get into all of that kind of stuff, that's because I'm uncomfortable as a parent. Parents need to become more comfortable with their kids' bad feelings. Parents need to become more comfortable with their kids' bad attitudes and start focusing on their kids' inappropriate behavior. The total transformation teaches you a whole base of knowledge on how to deal with kids. And each of these little things fits together, and it puts the discomfort and the responsibility back on the child.
Technique number 6, halt overstimulation.
Distractions such as music, TV, or video games inhibit effective communication. Never deal with behavior while these or other distractions are taking place. If friends or siblings of your child are present, go to another room with him. Script it before time that if he refuses to go to another room, his friends will be sent home. Also, if he tends to escalate, script it with your other kids that when you give them a certain cue, they go to their rooms. So you're just dealing with him without an audience. Having an audience stimulates these kids. So when you move to your action phase, you've communicated, it's not worked, now you have to take an action. When you move to that phase, you want to take away the audience. And one of the things you can do is work with your other kids to say, when Johnny's having a hard time and I tell you to go to your room, you need to go there. And you try to make it a positive thing. How can you help Johnny when he's having a hard time? And one of the things that you can help him is by going to your room so I can just deal with him. And, you can do it in ways that say to the kid, listen, as long as you have to stay in your room, I'll let you stay up later that night. So if it takes me half an hour to deal with Johnny, you can stay up half an hour later. So you don't lose anything. You just need to help me out at this time. And so there's ways that kids don't feel like they're just being cheated by Johnny. Script ahead of time that if he refuses to go to another room, his friends will be sent home. If these behaviors occur at a mall, have the child meet you at the door or at the car if he's age appropriate. Do not try to argue with him or make sense with him in front of a crowd. Because what happens is he becomes overstimulated. And when he's overstimulated, he cannot communicate and he cannot respond effectively. You can't talk them down from a state of overstimulation. The whole idea of a timeout, people use timeouts and they use timeouts in school. And the whole idea of a timeout is to cut down on stimulation. That's why when somebody's in a timeout, you're not yelling into them. You shouldn't be asking them questions. They shouldn't be listening to music. In school, a timeout should take place in a quiet place. The theory behind it is that the kid becomes overstimulated, cannot effectively respond, cannot effectively communicate. You've got to cut down on the stimulation. If some kid is watching TV or playing video games or listening to a Walkman, and you talk to him about something and he doesn't take his earphones off or his headphones off, the message is very clear. You don't matter. You're discounted. You don't count. And you have to act as if, remember, assume control. You have to act as if you're in control. Imagine an employee keeping on his Walkman while you were telling him what to do. It just wouldn't happen. It wouldn't be tolerated. Again, there'd be no speeches. When I talk to you, take off the earphones. When I talk to you, shut off the TV. We don't want this child stimulated. If you have to talk to a child, if you have to talk to your kid about anything that's going to be stimulating to him, shut the TV off, shut the games. It's not just enough to shut off the sound. Shut the TV off. Shut the game off. Not when you're done, just put it on freeze and let's go inside. You don't stay in the same room with the game up on the board because you don't want that overstimulation. Again, it's you and that child, and that's what you want to deal with.
Number 7, use strategic recognition and affection.
Remind the child of how well they handled a similar situation or link a recent success to the current conflict. I'll give you an example of that. If my boss comes into me and says, James, you've been doing a good job, but I know that he's going to talk about something bad. But if my boss says to me, James, you've been doing a good job, and I start listening louder. And the whole idea of strategic recognition and strategic affection is to get the kid to listen louder. So if you say, Tommy, you really did a good job with language this morning. You really did a great job. And now let's talk about pushing. So what you're doing is you're taking something that the kid has done well or worked on, and then you're expanding it to another area. And what you're doing is you're lending him some self-confidence. He'll be less defensive if the conversation starts out with something well that he's done. And again, no buts, only ands. Strategic recognition and affection is good all the time. You want to use a lot of it, and you want it to be real. You want to be able to say to a kid, hey, nice shirt. Hey, nice earring. Hey, I heard you talking on the phone. You sounded really great. Just to give kids that kind of feedback. So when you open your mouth, they don't know what's coming out. I encourage teachers to, if they have kids in their class and some kids who are unruly, sometimes pull them out of the classroom into the hallway and say, I just want to tell you, you did a great job this morning. I just want to tell you that, man. I'm really proud of you. This other kid got into trouble and you handled it well. So when you tell him to go to the hall, he's just not expecting negative consequences. So when you say, would you step outside a minute so I can talk to you? He don't know what's going to be said. And again, it stops that chain of events that leads with escalation.
Technique number 8, self-disclosure to the child.
Listen, let the child know what you're experiencing. Statements such as, it's impossible to talk to you when you're being rude to me, or it's very frustrating to try to help you solve this problem when you're blaming me, or I can't help you solve a problem when you're so negative about every possible solution. Those statements can be very helpful to a kid. You're letting this kid know that you're feeling frustrated. Now look, self-disclosure to the child is not, I hate you. That's not self-disclosure to the child. All right, I can't stand being with you. That's not self-disclosure to the child. It's not healthy. Self-disclosure to the child is reflecting how his behavior is affecting you and how his behavior is affecting your communication. Self-disclosure to the child communicates to that child how their behavior is affecting your problem-solving skills and your ability to communicate with them. You're going to feel, man, I can't talk to this kid when he's blaming me. How unfair is that? Here we go again. He's blaming me. You may feel that, but if you say it's impossible to communicate with you when you're being rude, or it's frustrating to help you solve a problem when you're blaming me, it just focuses, it puts it back on the kid. There are 2 benefits that come from self-disclosure to the child. The first is that the parents don't let emotions build and affect their communication with the child. That once the parent's feeling blamed, once the kid's being negative, it becomes very hard for that parent to communicate in a problem-solving process. So I think one of the things that happens is that it helps parents communicate what it's like talking to that child. It also, self-disclosure to the child also clarifies whose problem it is. I think it's very important to disclose to the child that it's the child's problem. And often the kid doesn't know that. Often these kids have been trained or learned that when they have a problem, the parent takes the responsibility for it. And the parent becomes responsible for solving it. So you forgot your book today. I have to call up the school janitor to see if he'll let me in to get your book. No. What happens is you forgot your book today. What are you going to do differently tomorrow to remember your book? And how are you going to handle the detention? All right, so the idea is not so much we can't solve problems, but when we try to help solve the problem, we want to be able to disclose to the child that the problem is his responsibility. And if that child is attacking us, we want to make it very clear that it's frustrating and impossible to help them. When a kid forgets his homework at school, or when he forgets his homework at home, you don't rush it into school. You say, I'm really sorry you forgot it, and I'm a little busy today, and let's figure out tonight we'll talk about how you can remember it from now on. Look, is it wrong for parents to bring the homework in? Absolutely not. But it communicates something to that kid that I don't think is effective on that kid learning to take responsibility. If you're the kind of parent that wants to bring the homework in, go ahead. Parents do it every day. But if you have a kid who's acting out, it's not the right message. If you have a kid who's just a regular kid, makes some mistakes, is forgetful, nice kid, respectful 95% of the time, not rude, does what he has to do, and he forgets his homework, bring it in if you can. But if you've got a kid who tests limits, who is bound to you by conflict, a kid who blames you for everything, a kid who feels like he's the victim, a kid who feels life is unfair, I wouldn't bring his homework in. I'd say, I'll help you solve that problem tonight. And if I'm on the phone with him, I'll say, well, we'll talk about it tonight. Maybe there's something that I can help you figure out that'll help you bring it in. And then when he starts to escalate, you say, I got to go now, Tommy. Bye-bye. And you hang up the phone.
Technique number 9, do, not say.
Children pay much more attention to what adults do rather than to what they say. So be prepared to follow through on whatever expectations you have of your child. Likewise, if you need a minute to compose yourself before you deal with a child, take that minute. You should be composed first. You should be doing the thing that you want your child to do. It's very difficult to be agitated in your voice and angry and ask your child to compose himself. Yelling, being sarcastic, or being disrespectful back at a child is not the same as a child yelling, being sarcastic, or being disrespectful toward an adult. The child doesn't learn anything, and the adult may momentarily feel better, but nothing has been solved. I think what you have to do with a child is figure out what you're going to do if he's disrespectful. Know that ahead of time, and then do that thing. So you're not just saying, calm down, I want you to calm down now. That's not helping, all right? You have to go take a minute and then come back and say, you need to calm down, Tommy, so we can talk about this. And then turn around and walk away. You need to do it. There's so many things adults need to do and not say. You can't be fighting with your neighbors and expect your child to be nonviolent or passive. Parents have a responsibility to role model whatever behavior they're asking their child to do. So it's not adequate just to say that you want the child to stop doing something. It's important that you role model that also. Children learn more from parents handling their anger appropriately than from parents never getting angry. When a parent says, I'm really frustrated with you when you talk to me that way, and then the parent turns around and calmly walks away, that child learns more than from some speech about how to talk to people.
Number 10, accept bad moods and bad days.
I think it's important to know that your kid does have bad moods and bad days, aside from the fact that he can't solve problems or communicate effectively. There are bad times, like there are people who you really can't try to solve problems with them in the morning. You just want to have a routine, and that's it. The less communication, the better. And I think if you accept that about that person, you're going to cut down on fights. There are many parents that want to hear about what the kid's going to do that day at breakfast, and they have kids who can't communicate that way in the morning. I think it's important to say to a child, you seem to be in a bad mood right now. Why don't we talk in 10 minutes? That's accepting a bad mood. I think it's important to say, it looks like you're having a hard time today. Why don't we start over? Why don't you take 10 minutes and let's start over? One thing that kids need to learn is that they can always start their day over. It can be 4 o'clock in the afternoon and the kid's having a hard time. And if that kid is willing to just take time out for 10 minutes and then let's sit down and start the day over before there's a fight and give the kid a chance to start the day over. A mechanic has a toolbox, and in a split second, he decides what tool to use. If it doesn't work, he tries another one. So these are tools in your box. Accepting bad moods and bad days is a tool in your box. That you can say, hey, maybe he's just having a bad day today. If a 12-year-old girl's soccer team loses, she's going to have a bad night. That doesn't mean she has to have a behavioral night. You can say, why don't you just take it easy tonight and relax? When we get home, just take it easy, and if you want to talk about things, let me know. And that way, then, you're accepting the bad mood that kid is in without having to fight over it. Now, again, if the kid becomes disrespectful or rude or obnoxious, it becomes very clear that, look, I'm sorry you had a bad day, but don't take it out on me. And then you turn around and walk away. Disconnecting is one of the most important things you can do. Let's take a behavioral situation where a kid is disrespectful and rude to a parent and becomes verbally abusive. And when I say that, I mean calling names. And let's look at how some of these things might play into it. First of all, hopefully, we would have used scripted for next time. So the kid knows if they're rude, you're not going to get into a discussion with them. You're not going to keep the discussion going. All right? And they know that once you say something's going to happen, it's going to happen in 60 seconds. And that's the way that it's going to be. And so let's say this kid is in the living room. You shut off the TV. Before you even assume control, you shut off the TV. All right, so the first thing that you do is halt the stimulation. Shut off the TV, shut off the video game. Then you say, I want you to do your homework now, and I'll check back in with you in half an hour. Then you turn around and disconnect. Checking back in with kids is a very good thing, It's really important to check in with kids every 15 minutes, every half an hour. That gives them a sense of accountability. You're holding them accountable. And when I say check in, I don't mean yell from the kitchen. I mean go into the room and say, how's it going? Can I get you anything? And so you're supporting the environment that kid needs to study. When you tell a kid to go do his homework and he says, why should I have to do homework? I don't want to do homework, or I don't want to do my homework now. You don't make any speeches. You say, well, it's time for you to take care of that responsibility. Do it now. So there's no justifications about how it's going to help in a person's career, how it's going to make them a better person morally or socially. You just tell them what their responsibility is. And you focus on that. I want you to go do your homework now. That's the behavior that you want. Okay? I want you to go into your room and do your homework. You're focusing on the behavior. You're not saying, I want you to feel better about your homework. You're not saying, I want you to understand that homework's important. You don't want any of that. You want them to go in and do their homework. You focus on that. It's also helpful if the kid did something right that day or the day before, so you can say, you did a great job going in and do your homework last night, and I'd like you to try for the same tonight. It's also important with some kids to be able to set a goal and say, our goal for tomorrow night is that you do it exactly the same way you did it tonight. You went in and then you play it back for the kid. I asked you to shut the stuff off. I told you to go in and do your homework. You went in and did it. I checked in with you a few times. You got it done, and you came out and played video games for an hour. And I think that it's important to review that and say, great job. And how can we make that happen again? No child with a behavior problem becomes a perfect angel overnight. The total transformation is the sum of many small successes, one after another after another. The first success begins with you assuming control for the first time, setting one limit, disconnecting, walking away. Just do it once, instead of screaming and allowing an argument to escalate. The minute you take one small action is the minute your child begins the total transformation into a happy, respectful, well-adjusted child. And it's the minute you transform from a frustrated, powerless parent to the parent your child needs you to be.